Hello and welcome to Create Women in Stockport. What I'm really excited is that through a stroke of magical luck, we've got an incredible guest to start off. And let me introduce you to her. Her name is Carol Morley. Thank you very much, Carol. So Carol was born in Stockport, first of all. Her films and documentaries include The Alcohol Years, which is BAFTA-nominated. You've done Dreams of Life, another documentary, The Falling, The Edge, Out of the Blue, The Typist Artist, and many more films, but you've also written a book called 7 Miles Out as well, which is kind of like a fictionary, but like a youth memoir, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's called auto-fiction nowadays. Autobiographical fiction, I think is the term. Yeah.
So I have been obsessed with you for the last 2 weeks. I watched. It's been dips and dabs. You know, I knew of you, but I've almost become your stalker, which I openly admitted, because your career just seems to be going from strength to strength from when you first started. Can you tell me a little bit about how your journey began and why you wanted to go down the film and the documentary route? And what was it about the industry that you love so much?
I could start with being born, because, you know, I mean, I was born in Stockport and brought up in Stockport. So I lived here till I was 16. Born in North Reddish, with people that are interested. In fact, I saw someone from school recently that I hadn't seen since I was 16, and she went, "What happened to your accent?" You know, and I went, "Oh, I've just left it behind or something." But we were talking about school, actually, and about how we were very nobody thought you'd make anything of yourself. And I remember in careers, the teacher at the time said, if you work hard, you might get a job. It won't be a job you want, but you might get a job. So we were talking about the lack of sort of opportunities that we felt we had. So at that time, I left school at 16 in 1982. I formed a band and was in lots of bands. And you thought that would be a kind of way out of where you were. And then I just spent many years on the club scene in Manchester, getting up to no good, which was brilliant in the end, because then later I made The Alcohol Years about it. So what seemed like a really messy time and I was a bit lost actually became quite valuable in terms of making something of it. But I got to London. I ran away from Manchester, really. And so at 16, I moved to Manchester with my mum. We moved to Rusholme. And then I sort of lived there and just did. I was thinking the other day, because I'd met this old school friend, every year I would start something. So I'd do like 2 weeks at Orpington College and then a week at Rochdale Art College and then just keep leaving. I couldn't quite figure it out. So I think I left school with about 3, a CSE and a couple of O-levels. Anyway, then when I moved to London about 21, still doing lots of things, not really knowing what I was about. And I think it was Loot magazine, the days of classified ads in newspapers. And it was either that or Time Out or something in London where I was living. And it was for A-levels. So at that point I was 23 and it was A-levels in photography and film and a part-time course in video. And so I actually, from Loot, I bought a darkroom. From a widow. Her husband had died and left a darkroom. I bought a darkroom and a camera, and I got a book out of the library, and I learned how to take photos and print them. So the kitchen in our kind of squat we were living in, I turned into a darkroom. There was a little microwave people were allowed to use, and then I printed. I developed the film in a bag, and then went and did these A-levels, 2 A-levels and this course. And there was a teacher there, which is why I've always really felt teachers are so important to all our lives. There was a teacher there called Bev Zorcock, and she I remember she had a denim jacket on with Sid Vicious on it. You know, I'd never seen a teacher like her. She's a filmmaker and a writer in her own right, but And that really got me into film. So she changed my life, and very, very significantly so. And then at the end of that year, I applied to St. Martin's, and I did fine art, film and video, which they didn't really teach you so much. They left you to your own devices. So you left being quite unemployable, really, in the industry, but with a kind of burning desire to tell stories and to figure out how to tell a story. That's what it left me with. It was like, I don't, it's not just about telling stories. It's like, how do you tell them? And then I applied for lots of Arts Council grants and stuff like that. And then I'd been working in a shop for a long time, throughout the whole time I was at St. Martin's. Before that, I arrived in London. And one of the first films I got money for was called I'm Not Here, which was about shop assistants and boredom. And but I'd done a lot of research into the history of female shop assistants. And that sort of began my interest in documentary, I suppose. Yeah.
And then did that take you on to the alcohol years? Yeah.
So the alcohol years was, I think deadlines were always really good. And there was a deadline for an Arts Council grant. And so I had to come up with an idea. And then I was like thinking of what could I put in. And then all of a sudden, the title came to me first, The Alcohol Years. And I put into the Arts Council for some money to make a short film. Then I started the research, and then it just got longer. It's actually 50 minutes because Channel 4 ended up putting money in, and it had to be that length for what they needed it for. So it probably could have been a bit longer. It's probably the right length. It could be shorter if you watch it. You might think it should be shorter, but films are far too long sometimes. But that was really galvanising, because so the alcohol years is where I come back to Manchester. I do come back to Stockport a little bit in the film, but I come back to Manchester and retrace my scurrilous past. And I put ads in the newspapers at the time for people to come forward. And then I trace people. I suppose what was amazing about that, the whole process of finding people, I'd only been gone for about 12 years, but it seemed a long, long time, and a very different time. And so I sort of started to interview people, and it felt to me, because they thought I was interviewing them about me at that time, it really did become about them. So it's quite revealing. If people haven't seen it, it's quite interesting in terms of what people say and reveal about themselves, particularly the men. Yeah. Particularly the men, because they think it's okay to talk like they do in it, which is great. I mean, I was very appreciative of them, but it's very revealing in terms of their attitudes to young women in the 80s.
Definitely. And if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. It's available on BFI. A great price.
Do you have a trailer of it?
I haven't got the trailer.
Yeah, okay,
We're going to go to
I wondered if you
another trailer.
Yeah.
Of for some reason, it was the only one that I couldn't get.
Yeah, that's all right. But the thing about alcohol years, I should say, is so a lot of people volunteered to be in it. And I loved how articulate everyone was. I mean, I loved everyone in the alcohol years. But what was interesting is we screened it in Manchester for a private screening for the people that were in it. And one guy that was in it came up to me and he went, I didn't realise you'd finish it. If I thought you were going to finish it, I wouldn't have been in it. It was like, and they really didn't think I had it in me. They just sort of came along for a lark, And then there was one guy at the time, I found out his phone number. I mean, it was all phone numbers then, or addresses. But I phoned him up and he just went, what I have to say about you, I wouldn't want my wife and children hearing, and put the phone down. And then there was a lot of people that wouldn't be in it. But recently somebody came up to me and said, I wish I was a guy. And he said, I so wish I'd been in the film. And it felt like some kind of victory because the film's still showing, and he's sort of like, I missed out on that. So that felt quite good. Yeah.
It's really highly, very personal about you, with a lot of people's perceptions of what they believed who you were. Yeah. Was that difficult to kind of hear some of that? Yeah, but I've always said, like, I've never been to a school reunion. I don't think our school had any. I'm not sure, but I've never
I never felt that kind of urge to go back without a camera, but give me a camera. And it's then territory that's so wonderful to explore in a particular way. I don't think I'd want to go without a camera. So having the camera made me brave, I would say, to not brave, that sounds stupid, but it made me kind of able to do it. Able to do it is a better word. Yeah, it made me kind of able to do it. And I feel like, and when people were saying some like awful things about me, which they did, I would be like, brilliant. It's brilliant for the film. Bring it on, you know. You'd be like, excellent. So, whereas if someone was to say that to you and there wasn't a camera there, you'd be like a bit like wasted opportunity, you know. And how can I? But in terms of, because this is about creativity, isn't it? And everyone here is interested in that, and part of that. But I feel like it's for me that starting point, a beginning with lived experience, has been really, really important to me. Yeah, especially in documentary. Yeah, you know, yeah.
I almost thought, oh, you'd be great to go out with on the night out.
Chrissy's here; she can give an opinion.
So we're actually going to show one of your most current films, which is the Typist artist Pirate King, starring Monica Dolan and Kelly MacDonald. So we're just going to show a trailer of that, and we'll go back.
And you have the badge on your seat, unless you sat on it. Oh, yeah. Are we in the way?
A letter of complaint about your late arrival.
Yeah, you too. The Queen.
That's more like it.
Any changes we should be aware of?
Your appearance has slipped to an all-time low.
This stuff.
That's my art. I used to be in the kitchen sink school of realism, but now I'm avant-garde and misunderstood. You need to drive myself and my art to this gallery before the deadline.
Must be close by now.
It is 280 miles precisely. Sunderland.
You said it was local.
It is to me. Well, let's get a move on, heave-ho. I'm king of everything!
Thelma and Louise, eh? I think you need to see Dorothy, your sister.
Oh, she'd love that, Dorothy would. Me turning up with my psychiatric nurse.
Oh, Audrey. You know what's funny? You've got me thinking in pictures now.
That's your aura?
Somehow, you know, that's the way I feel inside. Audrey! Hello. Nice seeing you, Audrey.
I believed I was going to achieve recognition.
You had such an exceptional gift for art, Audrey. I'd like to buy more of your work.
Vincent van Gogh only sold one painting in his lifetime. I've outdone it. The world is crying out for more magic.
Art makes life worth living. I'm glad I came with you.
You must be bonkers.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So this was a great film. You seem to hone in on really interesting multi-dimensional characters who are extremely complex, but also a level quite, you know, there's an ordinariness about them. Like, I just felt like I could, the characters that you hone in. Why did you hone in on Audrey and Miss? What was so special?
Oh my God, it was years of honing in on Audrey. Oh my God. So I was really lucky, and I got a Wellcome screenwriting fellowship. And so Wellcome are based in London, and they're the biggest global science charity of all time. And they at that time they put money into film and screenwriting and stuff. And so what was amazing, I got money for a year to, but at the end of that year, I didn't have to come up with anything. So it was really free, and I could do anything. And I got introduced to some psychiatrists and some psychologists and people that look at the effects of drugs on the brain, and that was the beginning of the fellowship. And then I was sort of free, and I gravitated towards the archive. And someone there, Gillian Scudden, who worked there at the time, mentioned, oh, they've got an archive of a woman that kept everything, all the wrappers of everything she ate every day. And I'm like, what's her name? She's like, I can't remember. Or I can't remember. Anyway, so I went to the archivists and the librarians, and they knew. And at that point, Audrey Amis, her archive was in deep storage in Cheshire, in these salt mines that Wellcome use. And it was uncatalogued. So there was no way of knowing much about it other than they knew it was 50,000 sketches, diaries, objects from her flat. And Audrey had died at 79 in London. She was from Sunderland. In her 20s, she'd gone to the Royal Academy to study art. When she was 24 and she was still there, she'd had a breakdown and got diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. So this was the 50s, and it was a very draconian treatment that she had at the time. And she never really got back into going back to the Royal Academy, but she continued with her art her entire life and worked part-time as a typist for the civil service. Anyway, so the Wellcome people gave me a couple of boxes for 2 hours in a room, and I was there all day, and I didn't get through because they were her scrapbooks of the food that she collected, the wrappers, and they were annotated so brilliantly. It would be like she'd gone to the Wimpy and ended up eating with 2 knives, and she went, it'll do, you know. She was like, and so it was all this annotation, which was very revealing about her as an artist, but also as a human being. And so I spent, I would say, the formal year going through all her materials, and then another year really working with it. And I met all her family. Dorothy, her sister, I got to know really well. Dorothy sadly died before the film was finished, which was really, because she was very excited about Audrey getting recognition. And it was a bit torturous, the creative process, because I was in development with BBC Films, and I wrote, because obviously feature films cost a lot of money, so you have to please people while at the same time trying to do what you feel is right. And because Audrey had been a real person, I had very particular things in mind I wanted to do. The first screenplay I wrote was very different than this film, and it was Audrey was in her flat in Clapham where she lived for 50 years, 30 years of those with her mother. And I did this kind of thing where the walls came down, and it was like Mr. Ben, if you know the cartoon, but the walls came down and she would step out into different worlds. And I remember meeting my agent, and I think I'd sent it to BBC, and my agent went, I thought he was meeting me to tell me how great it was, you know, and I'm like meeting him for lunch. And he went, the first thing he said, he looked, and he just went, Carol, this is completely unfinanceable. This is never going to get this made. I'm like, anyway, so then I went, and the BBC were not having it, or the BFI, British Film Institute. And then the second one I wrote, and these take, 8 months each or so. The second one I wrote, and it was a parallel universe, and it was Audrey in her life, living her life. And the other universe was an archivist archiving her life. So it was these two worlds. And there was a deep effect between one and the other. Well, that went down like a lead balloon. That just didn't fly. So then I started to think, okay, how can I put this extraordinary life onto film in a way that someone's going to give me money? And that's when I realised if I chose a genre that was recognisable, such as a road movie, and also Audrey loved travelling, so I created this structure of the road movie that is very recognisable to people. Usually in a road movie, someone picks up a hitchhiker, so it's all there. It's everything a road movie has is in it. But what I realised at a certain point and got very excited about was that in her diaries, Audrey would often, and all the family would talk about it, Dorothy would maybe meet you Audrey would maybe meet you and be completely convinced that you were her headmistress from when she was at school as a young person. She'd be convinced that you were an imposter or you were that person. So in the film, the people, Audrey and the psychiatric nurse meet on the way, stand in for people from her past. and she mistakes them for the people from her past. So it's a way of doing flashbacks without doing flashbacks. So I felt in the end I managed to do a film. I was happy that it represented Audrey's kind of way of looking at the world, but it was really tough to get it through the various places you have to get it through.
It's an astonishing story, and I think if you know people that have struggled with their health and mental health, it can be a tough watch, but it's a beautiful watch because of her journey.
I mean, what made me really happy, because when the film came out, we toured it around. Me and Cairo Cannon, the producer, we went around. I don't know, it was like 50 Q&As. I think we did one at the Light, but it was and Manchester as well at home. But we did a lot of Q&As, and it was brilliant because there were people from both sides of the psychiatric world that were really connected to the film. So because Kelly MacDonald plays the psychiatric nurse, you have that side of it, and then obviously Audrey has the experience of the mental health world from the point of view of having to use it, and it was amazing that people came up of all ages that identified with it. So it felt really good, and because I didn't want to, in making it, demonize anybody, and look, and it doesn't, but it's because also I wanted to. I think anyone, whether you live with mental illness or you live with someone with it, or both, or whatever, but it can be very difficult to live with someone with an acute mental illness. So I did want to honour the family as well. So I was trying to keep everyone happy, including the BBC and BFI. But
that's what women do.
I know you're trying to balance it all, but
possible. So the next one that I wanted to show is actually the documentary of Dreams of a Life. Which is an incredible true story of Joyce Vincent, who died in her bedsit in 2003 in London.
Hello, it's Carol Morley, phoning about Joyce. I'm looking for any information, no matter how minor, about Joyce Vincent.
Reporters always get asked, what's the best story you've ever done, or the worst story? And this is in my clutch of ones that you will just remember through a lifetime.
Mr. Vincent, we have a repossession order!
We knew pretty quickly that it was out of the ordinary.
She wasn't alcoholic, she didn't smoke, she didn't take drugs.
Miss Vincent! Miss Smith!
They said she died around December 2003.
The only way she could be identified was by comparing dental records.
It's so horrendous. She was found in front of her television that was still on for so many years.
3 years and nobody's come looking for you. Yeah, this mystery that's suddenly thrown up, but you just want to know more.
If you get to meet Aretha Franklin, you know this woman's a star. That's something. Joyce had that.
She has a very good voice.
People would gravitate towards her.
Very exotic, beautiful, everybody fancied her.
Everything about her was immaculate. She just reminded me of somebody that I would like to be.
People said she looked like Whitney Houston. I thought she's more attractive than that.
Somebody must have said, hey, we haven't heard from her for 2 months, 6 months, a year.
Watch me fall from grace.
You'd like to think that everyone's got someone.
Disappear with no trace.
I think about her a lot, really. Just holding her, actually. Holding her.
I just can't imagine her dying alone.
How did she get herself into that situation?
How come they weren't dead? If you lay it out in a book form, you'd be thinking, this got to be fiction. But this is real life.
Yeah. Like this. Yeah.
It's a great watch. It's a hard watch to kind of come away with. I mean, how difficult was it for you, as a detective, really, as an investigator?
I mean, it was really psychically it took over. I would dream about Joyce, but the odd thing. So Audrey Amis in Typist as Pirate King, she when she died, she left, you know, what became 85 boxes of archive at Wellcome, but was unknown, you know, and Joyce was unknown, but had left nothing whatsoever. And so with Audrey, obviously the Audrey film was after Dreams of Life, and so with Audrey, because she'd left so much about herself, it felt right to make a fictional narrative around it. With Joyce Vincent, it was like there was nothing. And I remember I was on the way I came across the story, because at the time it wasn't publicised. It wasn't on TV, but it had been in The Sun and the local paper. And I found that copy of The Sun on the tube. And I remember seeing it, and there was no picture of Joyce. And in fact, they got loads of details about her wrong, which is why later I met people that had read The Sun and not thought it was their Joyce Vincent, because they couldn't believe that could happen to Joyce. So they just thought it was the same name. But I remember seeing that newspaper, and I thought, immediately I saw it, I thought, I was just thought, oh, The Sun, I'll read The Sun. Because it's like, I don't buy it. So, and it was like page 7, I think. And immediately I saw it, I thought, I don't know who you are, but I'm going to make a film about you. And if I found out nothing about you, I'm going to do it. You deserve this. And I remember that very powerfully, right as soon as I saw it. And for some reason, it sounds weird, but I in my mind I went, and if I can't find anything about you, I'm going to make you a singer, and you're going to sing through your life. And that's what I immediately thought. And then when I met Martin, which took some time, Martin said she'd wanted to be a singer. So that was quite weird. Like, you feel like, oh my God. But it was very deep. Like, it went very deep. I did meet, the family aren't in the film for various reasons. But I did meet, she had 4 sisters and I met 3 of them. So I did meet the family. And in the end, the family aren't in the film. They didn't want to be interviewed for it because they felt ashamed, you know, they felt there was shame and people would attack them for it. So, but I think in the end, I was glad of what happened to it, because you could say the film's about friendship and about how our friendships in the world are very significant. And I've always felt, and I certainly felt making the film, that family can't be everything, and you certainly can't blame the family for what happened, but we make our own families in life. But yeah, so it was a very deep thing, and I felt hugely responsible. And I did dream of Joyce, and I think everybody that worked on the film had some kind of, I mean, they felt visited by Joyce. So we all felt we were doing it for Joyce, and it was about not letting somebody become invisible. And I did a lot of research in the film into things like that, because she died above a shopping centre in London, in Wood Green. And I did research in the shopping centre, and it was really weird because the shopping centre, 250,000 people visited it every week. And she died with the television on. And she was born in the same year as BT Tower got built, which is the big signals for TV and other things, but TV especially. And so it felt like she was, for me, very emblematic of our age and what it was becoming. Now, you might notice in The Sun there, in the newspaper, there was no photo of Joyce. She died in 2003. The story was 2006, and it was before social media. So there was no pictures of Joyce. There was no pictures anywhere. There was no online presence. And now, if someone's murdered or something happens to them in any way, they immediately pull down a picture from social media. That's why everyone's laughing. They're at a party or something, you know. So they'll find these photos. So there was no photos of her. And so I didn't know what she looked like, and obviously there was nothing printed of her. And when I met Martin, who'd been a significant boyfriend, he brought photos, and I've never forgotten that moment where he had them on the table. I met him at Shepherd's Bush Tube, and everyone's like, "Be careful, you don't know who this guy is," you know. And I had this baseball cap on, and we went to a pub, and he had the folder, and I knew there were photos, but I didn't want to be greedy and go, "I want to look now," And even he went to the loo when I didn't look at them, but he came back and we looked at them, and that was really powerful to see Joyce. And then, well, there's something in the film. There is footage in the film of Joyce, and I don't want to ruin it. Oh, it doesn't matter because but there's somebody in the film that I interviewed went, oh, my brother remembers watching Nelson Mandela concert, and he thinks he saw Joyce in the crowd. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, on television. And so then I did this process of trying to find it. And eventually I figured out what it was. Oh, someone else had also said she'd been in a documentary about crime. And I went to the British Library and looked at 10 years of Radio Times because they said there were no adverts. I never found it. But I did watch a lot of documentaries on crime for 10 years worth. Anyway, but then I remember going to the BFI and they had a screening room in the basement, and I'd called up the Nelson Mandela concert. And no one knew who owned the rights to it. It was all this stuff. Anyway, so I've spent a few days watching through it. And it's like a crowd of people, you know, and you're like, oh my God, you know. And then, and there was a really grumpy guy there. He was so grumpy. And he was like, I remember I'd go in and he'd be like, oh, you're doing it again. And he'd be looking at a screensaver like that went like this. And he'd just be staring at it, really depressed. And anyway, I'd go in this room and be like inching my way through this Nelson Mandela concert. And eventually it went backstage and I recognised Joyce from the back. Because of her hair, I just knew what she looked like, and her earring. And I recognised her, and I thought, oh my God, please, please turn around. Because everyone was looking at Nelson. It was Nelson Mandela backstage, and everyone was looking that way. And I'm like, I know it's her, but if you don't turn around, and she turns around. I've never forgotten that. I'm feeling it now. And I ran and got that grumpy guy, right? Because I went on my phone and there were no phone signals and I didn't want to leave Joyce. And I ran and got the grumpy guy and he came in and we just watched it and he watched it. And I remember him going, oh, I bet you're dancing on your feet. And he got really happy. And it was like really exciting. And we just kept watching it. And it was just so amazing because the woman that had died alone, we don't know if she was lonely, but she died alone in her flat, there was nothing left of her. She was skeletal. The housing association destroyed the contents of her flat for contamination. There was nothing left of her. Nobody, when they went to the scene, they thought it was a drug addict. You know, they just didn't think she'd been, you know, like she knew anybody. She'd had an existence beyond that. So they just wrote her off. And, you know, like if she had been a drug addict, she shouldn't have been written off. But it was essentially to then go to this extraordinary moment where she'd met Nelson Mandela and she had met him backstage and shook his hand. It was like incredible. She'd met Stevie Wonder. For all these weird ways, I found out so much of her life. But yeah, so that was one particular moment where you're like, it somehow feels inevitable after all the hard work, you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Definitely made me want to call up people that I hadn't spoken to for a while. It's an incredible film and really respected of the life of a woman that we don't really still.
Yeah, because it's a portrait of Joyce, but it's not the definitive Joyce. You know, it's a portrait of a person based on the people that remember her. Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm going to show another clip of The Fallen. There's someone in the audience who was actually part of the production here. It's got the incredible Maisie Williams.
Oh, and it was the first film Florence Pugh was in. I did discover Florence Pugh. I just like that on record. It wasn't Lady Macbeth, the film that came afterwards. It was The Fallen.
May I have absolute silence?
Stand. Silence in the corridors and communal areas. Skirts no more than 2 inches from the ground when kneeling.
If I were a fly on the wall in your house, what would I see?
You're quite an influence on the others. You're not to fraternise with any of these girls.
Who was the first person in your age group to show symptoms?
You all know something is wrong. You're not kids anymore now.
Have you had sexual intercourse?
Close your eyes. It's Phillips. I will not tolerate such conduct.
Crazy witches!
standards of behaviour must be kept. This is a school, it's not a mental institution. Oh, I can't you. I'm not mad.
Old secrets rise to the surface.
Dangerous. All the way down. Nobody knows who I am anymore. What I really like. What I think about doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've worked with amazing Maisie Williams, Florence, Pugh,
Maxine Peake.
Monica Dolan
Yeah.
in this film.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
phenomenal. To me,
Greta Scacchi was in it.
there's so many incredible women that you've
Yeah.
worked with over the years and repeatedly
Yeah.
worked with. What's it like being on set with such phenomenal energy?
Brilliant. I love writing stories with women characters at the heart of it. And this again, the Falling was based on a lot of research, where I'd come across an article about 10 years before the film, I think, and I had made a short film about mass psychogenic illness. And really, how it was once called hysteria, which is often assigned to women. And so I was with The Falling. I wanted this, like, it was largely female crew as well, wasn't it? Yeah. Agnès Godard, I got her from France. She shot Beau Travail. She didn't have an agent. I wrote to her, and she came over and she shot the film. And it was really a big experience of young and older women, and it was just brilliant, wasn't it? Those women, and from behind the camera and in front of the camera, and it was this energy. And I remember with Greta, so it was set in 1969, and I wanted it was a comprehensive school. I knew comprehensive, but I wanted it to be very strict because I looked into the time, and so we sort of trained all the young women to be like really sit up. And apart from Maisie Williams, all the other young women in it was their first ever film. So Florence Pugh, it was her first film, and the casting agent had gone, it'd be cheaper if you cast locally to your location, so we don't have to put these young, girls up in a hotel. And that Florence lived in Oxfordshire, so that's how we got Florence, and she was at school. And so you had these young women that had never been in the film. Then you had like Greta Scacchi, who had been, tremendously, a movie star, and Maxine Peake, who was like, just is my muse really, and I'm just so close to Maxine now. And so, it was just this incredible energy. But also, everybody, I would say, had a different way of wanting to approach acting. So that was quite, I remember at one point going, oh my God, I've someone that likes improvisation. I've got someone that likes to exactly know what step will be where. And there was like about 5 different acting, if you call styles, in one room at one go. And I was like, oh my God. And then, there wasn't a great deal of time. So with the young women, I worked a lot with music. So we had quite a lot of rehearsal actually with the young women. So they learnt to cry on cue to Mary Hopkins. So I just put a bit of Mary Hopkins on, them in tears. But with the older actors, so someone like Monica Dolan, I didn't meet her till the day before her block of filming. And I remember I thought I'd show her around the school. And so I was waiting at the school set, and I was standing there, and Monica got out of a taxi, and she thought I was like a production assistant. And she went, they didn't send the right taxi to the right place to me, blah, blah. Anyway, I gave her a hug, and she went, who are you? Like that. And I went, oh, I'm Carol. I'm the writer, the director. And she's like, oh my God. And then I remember not having much time and showing Monica around and showing her office that was all set dressed and everything. And Monica went, oh my God, now I've seen The Office, I know how to play the character. So it's just sort of trying to look for, in the little time you have, to find ways of making things make sense and happen and make people feel safe, actors feel safe in that space. Now with, it was, having the young people, there was a lot of energy and a lot of kind of working with them. It took a lot of energy. And just, really wanting them to be happy and do their best. And I remember Maxine Peake came on later. She's the mum in it of the Maisie Williams character. And I remember seeing Maxine arrive and being so happy because she was the first actor that I knew, because everyone else had been new to me, and it was sort of like, oh my God, I've got to work them out. So I remember seeing Maxine and being so happy. So happy. But yeah, it was brilliant. And just to take your point about working with a lot of women, there was, so in the film, there's a male psychiatrist, and we spent quite a lot of time, and all the girls get interviewed by him. And I've never forgotten the actor that played him saying, that was a privilege and a pleasure to work with so many women. Like, you know, he'd never had so many women around him, and he said it's such a different atmosphere. But, you know, for all us, it was just the atmosphere we felt we should create. Not even should create, just natural, wasn't it? It was just natural. And it was very collaborative, but everybody knew their place. You know, it wasn't just free for all. It was like everybody contributed really amazing things. And I think, obviously, as a filmmaker, that is really what you're doing. You're creating collaborations all the time. All the time. So even in script writing on your own, you're kind of collaborating with your characters, and it's always a collaboration. And then later, when you get to work with brilliant cast and crew and heads of department, it's an amazing privilege.
You play around with beautiful cinematic photography. A lot of it seems to be based in nature, and also there's a beautiful music that you've got. Can you tell us your influence and how you're trying? Is that something that you go, I must have that great cinematic look, and I must have that great... Well,
in terms of music, I always begin with music. So when I'm writing, I remember early on, when I started script writing, reading a book and it said never put a track in because you might not get clearance for it. But I always do, and we always check we can get clearance, and then I play it on set. So then when you play the song on set, everybody can be in the mood for it. Like in the mood for what the scene is, because they're sharing that experience. So if an act, like in Typist Artists, I didn't play music because Monica likes absolute quiet. So we didn't have anything, just whispered. So I feel like you've got to adapt the way you like to do things as well with the way others like to do it. But I love music. And so in The Falling, a case in point is, while we were filming it, I'd written into the script the alternative school orchestra. So they've got like a Descant recorder and a triangle and a xylophone. Anyway, and they just came up with this great song in about 20 minutes, like Florence and Maisie and Anna and the others. But anyway, after that night, I dreamt that Tracy Thorn, who I didn't know, who was from Everything But the Girl, or still is, that Tracy Thorn had done the music. And then I wrote to her on Twitter, and I said, would you consider doing the music? Anyway, she did. And she used the instruments from the Alternative School Orchestra. So it's more like her original group, the Marine Girls. So for me, music is so crucial. But in terms of the look of something and the cinematic thing, I feel first and foremost, I feel that, I think it's why everything I've done looks different, because I never want to impinge a look or a style on anything. I feel it should come from the characters and the story. So I always go from that way. Yeah.
Brilliant. Before we go to some questions and answers from the beautiful creative women here in Stockport, I wanted to show the Outer Blue, which I just watched this afternoon. Which is, again, it's an incredible...
And you've come as Stardust.
I have come as Stardust.
Yeah.
This film feels different because of the way you shoot it. I could be any of those people in your other films.
Yeah.
Or any one of these people could be any one of those films. Whereas this one's very film noir.
Yeah.
We'll show the clip if that's okay, and we'll ask some questions before we go to you guys.
Do you know your place in the universe?
We got all the person down. We'll show you the observatory. Looks like that shot there.
Associate Professor Jennifer Rockwell.
One of the Rockwells?
Colonel, I'm Detective Michael Lamb.
See your daughter laid out like that. She was my whole life.
Jennifer, Jesus Christ.
I don't think Jesus had much to do with us, Dr. Strawley.
What's this about?
You're a person of interest.
Meanwhile,
maybe you can help me figure
know, you two aren't as different as you seem. You're both looking for clues.
You can tell a lot by looking. You know what happens to nosy girls, eh? They lose their noses.
What's the story, Mike? Can you explain your place in the universe?
I am not the woman people see.
We are all stardust. We're following the energy, like a trail of clues, leading closer and closer to this black hole's dark heart.
Afraid of the dark, you're taking.
Yeah.
So this film, it feels a very different type of production compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through that experience?
I mean, this was a Martin Amis book called Night Train that I adapted. Luke Rogard wanted to adapt it, and he hadn't, and he gave me his blessing to adapt it, which made me really want to do it. And then I don't know, it felt like I had to, absorb that film noir world, it's really, really different from the book, totally different. And yet people that had read the book went, oh, it's so like the book. And I'm like, it doesn't have a line from it left, it doesn't have much left from it. But the Jennifer Rockwell and the cop, Mike, the cop is there. But yeah, again, it was just like looking into the story and looking into the characters. And because there was this, I sense that Mike was this blue star and Jennifer was a red star, and they were twin stars somehow, and they had this effect on each other in death and in life, which is not dissimilar to the experience of Dreams of a Life with me and Joyce. So it was that kind of sense. So the palette of the film is very blue and red, and so I hate on the trailer where it says stylish. I hate the word stylish. It's like, but it is that idea that the blue and the red represented Mike and Jennifer more than making the blue and red part of the style or something. And then it was shot in New Orleans, so it lends itself. And it was always that Mike, the woman detective, would be New Orleans like that. She was her city, So it was trying to look at the city. We shot it in 23 days. Wow. So it was like kind of, it's hard to watch the film because I'd loved more time. But it was like 23 days of shooting. So there was James Caan. That was interesting. What the experience I got in America was with different kinds of actors, definitely. So James Caan, of course, is a major movie star. So and Patricia Clarkson. When I had them in a scene together, all hell broke loose. Because there's a thing in film where Patricia she was number one on the call list, but had never wanted to shoot her takes first because she liked to learn her lines more as you were shooting other people's close-ups. So, and then as soon as it came to shooting James Caan, she wanted to go first. But he wanted to go first. And I remember that was like, I had to diplomatically work that out. So it was a different, but yeah, so I feel it was like probably more ambitious in terms of, it's sort of its look, I suppose. But also what I learned in America as well is you double the crew. So if there's a computer needing to be turned on, you have to hire someone for the whole day to turn it on. You can't turn it on. And also on Out of Blue, I didn't have any playback because playback was an extra cost. So I wasn't allowed to look back at anything, even though we shot digitally, which I didn't mind because it was like shooting film, but I wasn't allowed to look back because we hadn't paid for that. But it is a union thing, so you don't, people aren't doubling up jobs and stuff like that. Yeah. Even though New Orleans wasn't tight union, it was still sort of a union thing, yeah.
What I've picked up on the conversation that we've had today.
Yeah, we only met today, don't we?
What I really find really interesting, and I think it's definitely a lesson that a lot of women generally kind of struggle with, but it's been clear in this conversation. You've always asked. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
And even with the in the newspapers, we're speaking to the directors, and emailing the photographer, videographer.
Yeah.
I think that's a real big lesson. Is there any other kind of inspiration that you can share with this wonderful audience to inspire them, or the barriers?
Well, I would say that you can overcome yourself, right? Because I think that is a struggle to overcome yourself, and because probably all of us growing up in one way or another have had external people telling you can't do something, or in the general patriarchy or whatever. And so I feel like you internalize it. And in fact, I didn't. I was so because I'd gone out to the hacienda and the drunken days, I was really confident in certain situations. Like I could walk in a pub and go up to someone and say, I reserved this table earlier, even though it was bullshit, just to get the table. But what I couldn't do was do public speaking. I was very nervous if I met like someone, a commissioner. I would be really nervous and balls it up, because I'd just be so like, I can't do this, I can't do it. And I didn't do public speaking until I was about 38 or something. And I just realised it was getting in the way of so much, so much. So it's that thing that we can overcome ourselves, and there's obviously all different ways of doing it, but it is a freedom. It is a freedom, and I think that anything. Well, I mean, if you're going to be putting your work out there, the large amount of reality is a rejection. And I believed at one point, so I came to this late, it's all late, and then some others, because it's taken so long in some ways. But I feel like that's helped in a way, because I'm really sure about the privilege it is to make a film, of what I want to do, of why I want to do it. So I don't get sidetracked by, I could go and do this bit of TV about this. I just know that I have these stories I need and want to tell. So that's very important to me. But I feel that finding, I lost my track there by doing that, but anyway, but finding that part of yourself and giving it the liberty to be free is really important. But accepting that things do get in your way and will get in your way, and they're other people, but they're also yourself. But rejection, I think I've learnt with rejection is not, it's hard to do, but just to not take it personally. Because if you take it personally, again, it's just part of that internal beating yourself up. So it's just to not take rejection personally, to work really hard at what you do, to not let opinion, other people's ideas of what you should do get in the way. But I have to say, working in film, it's daunting, like raising the money, it's daunting, it's devastating when projects don't happen. It's constantly devastated. And there's a small part of the nugget where you're working with brilliant actors and brilliant heads of department and crew, where that's the magic, but it doesn't come that often. But I've realised lately, when I try and reflect on it, that the best thing is to have the concentration to work on your ideas. And that is a freedom in itself, before it even meets someone that's going to tell you it's not very good. But also, people not telling you it's very good is a good thing, because it makes you better. And actually, I think that is, it's hard to take criticism, but I think when you do, or try. Look, some people give terrible opinions and notes. They just do. Let's accept that, right? But there's other people, and you're kind of like resisting, but that there's important stuff to listen to, and that's when it's important to listen. So I guess don't let other people get in your way. Don't get in the way of yourself, and enjoy the moments of discovery that you can get out of what you do.
The process.
Yeah, the process. Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And just before we get a microphone, just to go to, if anyone's got any questions, do raise your hands. Is there any future projects you're allowed to tell us about?
Well, I'm allowed to tell you, because no. at a point, it was before I made Dreams of Life. So when we were Dreams of Life about Joyce Vincent, so I'd done a lot of research. I'd found Martin, I'd found a lot of people that knew, and we could not get the money to make it. I mean, I did write ferocious letters to all the financing bodies that were given money by the government, you know, to look at their remits that claimed they were looking at inclusivity, and they wouldn't make the film. So it was like really difficult. And I remember meeting my niece, and I went, well, I suppose it's a bit like if you write a book and it doesn't get published. And she went, it's not though, is it? Because the book exists in the form it will always exist. And so I went and wrote, she inspired me to write 7 Miles Out. So 7 Miles Out was written about growing up in Stockport, and it goes from 11 years old to 18 over 7 years. 7 miles out, Stockport, 7 miles out from Manchester, yeah. You know, it was a boutique, but it was based on my real experience. So when I was 11, my dad killed himself, and so it's in the book it's a fictional character called Anne, but using my life experience, and it's her growing up and discovering music. So I've written the screenplay for that. So that hopefully will become a film called 7 Miles Out. Yeah, and. So we're financing it, but it really makes me realise just how I don't know if there's a British film about this a TV show that was Lady Parts on Channel 4, but is there a film about young women making a band, British young women making a band? I can't think of one. You know, it seems like astonishing, you know. Anyway, so that's one. And then everyone gets very excited about this. So I'm sort of, I keep giving people to read before. I've not given it any money people yet or any cast, but I keep working on it. But it's called Air of Night, and it's a time-travelling a lesbian witch romance. Oh, wow. I'm told I should call it a romancy. Apparently that's big now. Romance meets fantasy. But anyway, they travel back to 1650. Oh, wow. So I'm enjoying that. So I've been living with my characters, Dion and Moll, and all the other characters, yeah. So I'm very happy just in that world. Yeah. Yeah.
So has anyone got any questions for Carol? Sandra?
It's really great listening to your talk. It's really interesting.
Thank you.
I just wondered if you could say anything about how opportunities for women in creative industry have changed since you started your career, and whether there's any sort of what you might call progress.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, okay, so I feel when I was making The Falling, there was this, I think everybody had realised they hadn't got enough women directors. And they weren't developing enough women directors because they weren't. In Britain, I'm only talking about Britain. You know, at that point, it was about 6% of, but it's not that. But although now there's a lot more visible women directors, there's not necessarily sustained careers of the women directors. So it's still quite low in terms of every year. I think in Hollywood they looked at it, it was pretty low. And so what then is the knockoff effect of that is when you're getting male writers being privileged or male directors, there's less roles for women. And they've looked at that again, especially in Hollywood, and the leading roles, there's less, you know, fewer for women or whatever the correct term is. But anyway, but my experience now is I feel, it's a funny thing to say, but I feel sometimes people think, oh, well, we've got a lot of women now, we don't need you, Carol. And you're like, oh, okay, all right, so I'm not special anymore. You do feel a bit like that, you know. So I feel like another bus that's come along, you know. It's like, but I feel always anyway that it was never about, in film, you maybe, from my experience anyway, a woman will direct a film that will, I think, is misogynist. You know, so it's kind of not about who makes them, but it's like what is culturally accepted. And I feel like the representations that we get can be very, very problematic wherever they're coming from. But certainly from a point of view, I'm sure when your experience in working on a film set, you might sometimes have been, it's just so male dominated, isn't it? You know, so yeah. I don't know if it was all female, but Susan Seidelman, you know, she fought for Madonna to be in it against male executives who didn't think she should be in it, because Madonna at that time was nobody. And then by the time the film came out, Madonna was Madonna. So she made that decision.
And actually, that was she
Yeah.
was fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant, you know. But then again, you fight for these, you know, because they'll go, I mean, you know, there will be ideas about what, I mean, it's awful about what is sexy, you know, even now amongst a cast and stuff, yeah. And also, well, I'll tell you one thing, that when you're putting a project together, so 7 Miles Out is largely a female cast, but sales agents, so they're the ones that try and get money for your film or sell it after, they said you should cast the 2 male roles first because they're seen as more important. And that is a very definite industry thing said now. So it's sort of rife, you know. Yeah.
Has anyone got any other questions?
Or you can say anything, really. But, yeah.
She said she'd answer anything. What you having?
Yeah. Oh, wait for the mic, then everyone can hear you. Yeah.
I'm not sure what my question is. Was it something to do with the beginning bit? And it comes from that.
Yeah.
And then
I know what you mean.
You know, 11-year project.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's that beginning bit, and then you have to try and find the truth of that beginning bit.
Yeah, it's so true.
And is it that sort of talisman inside that makes you say, I've got to do this, that I know this
Yeah.
is... What is it?
Well, I think you've got it. It's like that initial feeling, you know. And I remember early on, like when I was starting out in film and stuff, there was an executive from Channel 4, and he was advising everyone to kill their. I mean, it sounds brutal, doesn't it? I mean, it's like you should all kill your babies. You should stop having your passion projects, you know. And it's like I thought, well, what's the point? You know, what's the point? But I think it's the talisman is a brilliant thing when you're just sort of that. Well, for me, you know, when I feel something and I know that I'd rather face impossible routes to get there than not, you know, and I feel that, yeah, it's that connection you get, and it's something inside, definitely. And then I do believe as well, at some point, I always get to the point where I know it sounds wrong, but I always get to the point making a film where I realise I'm not making the film. It's something, there's something else is propelling it, yeah. So you feel it's sort of slightly occult, where you're going, oh my God. And with Typist Artist Pirate King, because that took about 5 years, I just thought, you know, when anything, the family would always go, if something goes wrong, that's Audrey up there having a laugh at your expense. And it'd be like, we finally screened the film in Sunderland and it wasn't in sync. How can a digital print not be in sync? And everyone was like, the family were like, that's Audrey, you know. But yes, but it's not just necessarily a person, it's a feeling. It's a feeling of, it's some, you know, an atmosphere that, you know, you've got to kind of take forward, yeah. Or manifest into something. Yeah.
I think one of the key things is if you've got an idea, just go for it and fail at it.
Yeah.
Wonderfully fail at it.
It's to listen to it, you know, whatever it is to listen to it and develop it and work with it and also with people, because obviously I write the screenplays and you know what, over the years I've learnt that it's actually in Sid Field's screenwriting book at the end, he goes, don't get it right, get it written. And so the idea of that is just to get it out of you and then it will never look good or feel good to start with, and then you work on it. You know, the adage like writing is rewriting. And I really agree with that. And I think with anything, it's just like, you've just got to begin. You've got to begin, let yourself begin and plunge into things. Now, one way I begin as well is research. So if I might have that, like see the Sun newspaper and feel that feeling, but then it's about the research and the working through. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, you have to have the microphone. I learned that you should always wait for someone to have the microphone. Yeah.
I'd be interested to know if you were planning to make any more documentaries, or
Did you see that as a sort of vehicle to get to your fiction?
No, I didn't see it as a vehicle, but I think what happened was, so I made The Alcohol Years, and I felt like, because that had looked at my life, it gave me permission to look at Joyce's life, because I'd been very exposing in it. I mean, everyone else exposed themselves too in it, literally, Alan Wise. but I felt like with Dreams of a Life, I suppose I was very, very careful, and it made me very, very, very aware of all the kind of ethical elements involved. And I think unless something comes along or somebody comes along like Joyce, I probably wouldn't do another documentary, because it's more like I never even saw it as a documentary. It was just the form had to be that for Joyce. You see what I mean? So I might, if it felt right.
Seems like that was a really important project for you.
Yeah, and it taught me everything about everything, because it really, it just taught me. Joyce taught me so much from Beyond, because it's like about character, about in a way, when you make a documentary, when you're interviewing someone, they are your actor, they're your social actor, and so there's not that much difference in a way between, you have to make them comfortable to be able to perform who they are. Actually, in Dreams of a Life, if you watch it, apart from one guy who had a bad back, I wouldn't let any. I mean, there's a couple of people in chairs, but on the whole, I made people sit on stools. So they would have to sit up and not, and so there is someone slouching, but someone had a bad back. But it's sort of thinking of things like that as well, like how to but anyway, that was a little detail. But I do think it's like documentary for me is quite problematic, because often they iron out contradictions, and I feel like I wouldn't want to iron out the contradictions of who a person is or what a story is about.
Did you know at that point that you wanted to move into fiction?
Well, I'd sort of made short films, scripted films, short scripted films. So I'd kind of done that. But also in the film world and TV world, often women will direct documentaries because it's a cheaper medium, so they're entrusted with that. Any analysis of it. So I feel like I felt also that I deserved. I deserved to do drama. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've come down, and I'm sure you could grab Carol for a moment. But can I just say thank you so much. To Carol Morley.
I feel like I should stand up. I'll just clap you. Yeah. Should clap you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. You did brilliant. Right.